Alrighty guys, so here we are. Alaska Highway East, Atlin South. The 7 South, the BC 7 South. Coming to the junction for this one here, guys. Atlin South, that was a sharp little corner there. I wasn't expecting that. So we're on the southbound 7 highway now to Atlin. It was the center of a gold rush. It was also a transportation hub for the Klondike. So for the first little bit there in Atlin, people were just using it for transportation. But then somebody went over to the east and they found gold. Now there's a gold rush there in Atlin, right? Like, so it wasn't just a transportation thing. So it really changed the thing. And then there was 10,000 people came to Atlin and it was huge. So we're on the Highway 7 to Atlin, southbound Highway 7. Atlin Lake, major transportation hub. Like the railways, Sternwheelers intimately linked to the transportation of the gold rush and the frontier in general, guys. Basically, the way it worked was Atlin Lake was a highway to transport people coming up from the all red road up from Telegraph Creek and Dease Lake there in the Cassiar country, coming up here into BC, going across the lake and onto the gold fields, right? It was one of the ways to get around. So that's Atlin Lake there. We're about to cross into the BC border from Yukon, so we're currently in Yukon Highway 7, the Atlin Highway. And then once you get on the BC chunk, it has no name. The Yukon has named it, and the Yukon is already in any places in the Yukon, but the Yukon gave the name Highway 7. And then BC, it's just a road. It doesn't have a name, doesn't even have a number on it. It's just a road. And for a long time, it was just a dirt road, and it was pretty narrow, and people kept telling the BC government, like, you've got to work the road. And it's paved now, but it took them a while to get the whole road sorted and everything. But we're going to be coming into Atlin about 45 minutes there, and we're going to do some exploring, look around the town. Atlin's a really cool town, guys. Frontier town. Just has one of those vibes, you know? It's just some of these towns, you see them, and they're just, they just have that feeling, and it just feels special, right? And it gives you the vibe. Welcome to British Columbia. And then the road changes there. 80 in BC there. So there's no more lines painted. BC doesn't do that. They don't paint lines on their roads. The Yukon does. But Buckley-Stikine District. Good road though. Like the surface is good. They didn't paint any lines though because they don't care. It's not important to BC to have lines. So we're just driving down Atlin Lake now. Atlin Lake is massive, guys. And Taku's on the other side of it. And the Taku Railway there, that was the other thing we saw in Carcross. It's all linked together, guys. Oh, that's a nice view. You can see the road too, guys. It's quite the road, eh? It's a good road. Alrighty, guys. So here we are. Discovery. Site of the 10,000 person town that was during the gold rush here in Atlin. Miner with a sluice box. Discovery claim. Main street of Discovery. Pine Creek at the mouth of Willow Creek. That's all stories. Is there any actual info here? So this is the cabin, guys. Is there any info on the back? In 1896, discovery of gold in the Klondike started attracting tens of thousands of adventurers and dreamers from all over North America and Europe. In 1898, German immigrant Fritz Miller and Nova Scotian Kenneth McLaren staked the rich discovery claim on Pine Creek. Word quickly spread, and soon the creek was lined with dozens of tents as hundreds of miners poured into the area. The Atlin Gold Rush was on. Quickly, 2 major towns sprang up. Atlin was the supply and service center, and Discovery was the main gold camp. Permanent log and wood frame structures soon replaced the tents as hotels, stores, saloons, and dance halls were built. At its peak, it was estimated that there were as many as 10,000 people living and working in Discovery and on the surrounding creeks.
Major dredging operations in the area proved unsuccessful, and by 1907 the boom was over. Discovery soon shrank to only a fraction of her former size. But with 6 stores, 6 hotels, a laundry, blacksmith shop, school, church, and post office, the community was still viable. About 200 people lived in the town itself, and an additional 200 lived on the creeks during the summer months until the outbreak of World War I. Unfortunately, the subsequent shortage of labor and capital curtailed further mining development and production. By the early 20s, the school, church, and hotels had disappeared, along with most of the residents. After a number of fires in Atlin during the early 1900s, some property owners saw economic advantage of moving their empty buildings from Discovery to Atlin. In Atlin today, there is a hall, store, and several houses that were originally built in Discovery. By 1930, the town site was clearly abandoned, but the setting and the buildings which remained still had purpose. Atlin and Southern Lakes had become fashionable tourist destination. During those years, thousands of guests from Atlin Inn toured the abandoned town via fleet of Buick taxis. The traffic ceased too when the White Pass and Yukon Company closed the hotel and beached the MV Turan in 1936. Today, very little is left at Discovery. Sadly, the site of British Columbia's last big gold rush has all but disappeared. So this is the cabin, guys. It's all that's left. I'm not lying. I gotta say this again, because I'm always in the car. Everybody always thinks I'm crazy. There's nothing to show you guys, but here we go, guys. I found it. I knew I'd find it. And then we got Discovery Wreck Site. Old crane there. See that old crane? We're just at the town site of Discovery, guys, in Atlin here. Is that a piece of the dredge there left over? It's something. What is that? But yeah, this would be one of the mines they're working. No trespassing, so I'm not going any further, but is it birch trees here? It's an Ontario thing. So, Discovery, guys. This is the Discovery town site.
All right, guys. So here we are, Atlin. We're just about to come into town here. About 5 minutes out of town. If you're driving on the road, it's just the road too. I can't give you guys any name for it. I just call it Atlin Road. But Highway 7 in the Yukon, unnamed in BC. We're coming into Atlin now, kilometer 90 on the road. So, and then it's an in and out road. So we're gonna be taking this road the same way in as we did out. If you look over there, there's volcanic cones, cinder cone formations. It's the volcanoes, the Atlin volcanic field. It was really, really cool, and it caused a lot of speculation. People thought it went off. Other people said it didn't go off. So there's like a whole thing, right, as to like, did it erupt back in the 1898? Because people said they saw light over the hills and that was lava, and then there was a report saying no, it was actually fake and that wasn't real. I believe it actually ended up being fake. It wasn't real. But aside from the, false alarm on the volcanic field thing, it did erupt before. There's all this red tephra rock left behind, or red tephra basically, the volcanic ash. And there's lots of placer gold. Some of these creeks, man, Spruce Creek, Pine Creek, Surprise Creek, pulled a lot of gold out of here. So Atlin too, food, gas, travel, and a travel. And the mountains here, guys, are just absolutely fantastic. Stellar. Like, look at the scenery here. It's fall. It's so nice here. So nice here. I love it. I love it out in the bush, guys. No cell service, though. I'm still in town and I have no service. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to have cell service here. Well, okay, I guess I need Wi-Fi then, because I ain't got no cell service. Yeah, no, there's no cell service here. That's kind of what I figured. So here we are, Atlin.
Alrighty, guys. Welcome to Atlin, British Columbia. Sternwheeler there. That was Atlin's other big claim to fame. It was the gold, and then there was the Sternwheelers. Dedicated to the men and women, 1898, founders of Atlin Gold Camp. There's the memorial. 1898, Atlin, BC. Atlin Gold Rush, Stampeder. 1899, guys. It's a gold town. It's a real frontier BC gold town on the edge here. On the edge of northern BC. They weren't sure if this was part of Yukon or BC, and that matters because mining law in the Northwest Territories, the size of claims is different than the size of claims in BC. So they had inadvertent claim jumping here because people in the Northwest Territories were staking claims as if it was the Northwest Territories when really it wasn't the Northwest Territories, it was BC. And so they had inadvertently claim jumped, or the claims weren't filed properly and it was a surveying nightmare. So then they had to do a whole bunch of things to fix it. But you can see there, guys, Alaska Highway, 98 kilometers. And then this is all the stuff in Atlin. Atlin's got a big heli skiing community as well, guys. Lots of heli skiing goes on here. But you can see very clearly, guys, 1898, the same year as the Yukon Gold Rush. It was a spin-off. This was a spin-off of the Yukon Gold Rush. It just wasn't as popular because the only people that would have known about it were the Canadians that were taking the all-red route up the Stikine there. And they go over the pass. We're going to Chesley Summit. We're going to talk about all that. We're going down there through Dease Lake. But no, this is a Canadian rush, man. Like the Americans, I'm sure there was Americans here, but it was mostly Canadian guys that were doing this one. So yeah, guys, we're going to go into the town of Atlin now and actually look at the stuff in town.
No service, eh? How is there no cell service here? Get BC, man. It's ridiculous here. They just don't care in BC about cell service at all. Oh, the Globe Theater, nice. He used to come here for shows. Still no cell reception.
Alrighty, guys, so this is the terrain, or terrain, I don't know how you say that, but basically, here we go. Early history. Fritz Miller and Kenneth McLaren began prospecting for gold on Pine Creek in the cold, dark days of February 1898. The Klondike Stampede was in full fever and people were struggling over the mountain passes on their way to Dawson. But when Miller and McLaren recorded the first claims on Pine Creek in July, thousands of stampeders were mesmerized by the news of a major strike so close and changed course to Atlin Lake. White Pass Yukon route had started construction of railway in May 1898. By July, the company ran its first excursion train to the end of the rail at Rocky Point. As many as 2,000 men were at work on the project when the cry of a gold strike rang through the work camps. Within days, hundreds left their jobs to try their luck in Atlin. Most left without collecting their pay. Many took their picks and shovels with them. By the end of August, more than 500 new claims had been recorded. Atlin City was a teeming frontier town by the summer of 1899. Royalties were paid on more than $1 million in gold that year. It was impossible to obtain an accurate count of the restless numbers of people in Atlin. The Pine Creek town of Discovery and along the creeks, the population was estimated to maybe around 10,000. That's Taku Landing Railway. Taku Landing, 1898. The railway has not yet been built, but a horse-drawn tram is in place. A Sternwheeler is visible to the left. And this is where we are here, right? We're Atlin Road. We came from Whitehorse, we went down to Carcross, we did over to Tagish, and then down to Atlin. The Atlin II. Built in Atlin in 1914, the Atlin II was equipped with 40 HP 4-cycle Brennan engine. This sturdy launch was used for scenic tours of Atlin Lake, hauling freight and supplies from Scotia Bay. It's a gorgeous boat. Atlin 2, guys. That's the mountains behind there. So we got the capstan, the winch. So this is the Sternwheeler, guys. Atlin had a huge Sternwheeler following. This is what it traversed Atlin Lake, guys. Up and down, Taku Landing there. Picked everybody up, shuttled everybody around. Be nice to go inside. It's not that time of year anymore though. All this riprap out here, it's pretty good, eh? Nice little point. Can you imagine taking one of these across the lake, eh? Imagine how fun that would have been. Oh, there's a capstan winch here. A windlass. It's an old one. It's an old school one. Look at her, eh? Look at the piston, eh? And the crank. So what do we got here? We got the manifold. And then we got piston one. Piston rod there. Connecting it to the fly. And then what do we got here? Oh yeah, and it moves the winch. Okay. The heydays of travel, guys. Steam travel, train travel. That was the golden age. We all missed it. It's sad what's happened. But at least they're preserving it now. But yeah, it's tragic in some ways, guys. It really is. Towns like this, all this history, all this culture. So quiet sometimes. So this is Lake Bennett. And then that's Atlin Lake. So you would have taken the ferry from Carcross. You would have gone through Graham Inlet, and then you would have gone to Taku Landing, and then this is where this tram would have been, take you to Scotia Bay, and then you would get another Sternwheeler, which would pick you up and take you to Atlin. Long before construction of a road to Atlin, a system of narrow lakes provided the best year-round route to Atlin. Only a narrow strip of land on the west side of Atlin Lake had to be portaged. By 1898, steamers were starting to service the route, traveling from Bennett to Taku on the west side of the portage. Once at Taku, travelers had to make their own way over the portage to Scotia Bay on the east side of the portage and across Atlin Lake by boat. In 1899, Captain John Irving had the Sternwheeler SS Gleaner built at Bennett. The SS Scotia was assembled and launched on Atlin Lake at the same time to serve the heavy traffic to Atlin. He also bought in a diminutive wood-burning locomotive called the Duchess, and battled with the rival companies for government permission to build the railway along the portage. By the summer of 1900, White Path and Yukon route settled the transportation war once and for all by buying out all interests. Narrow gauge Taku tram was built, and then the company now realized its potential to offer through service all the way from Vancouver to Atlin. The Duchess chugged to and fro on the busy line. There were no turntables, and the locomotive had to make the trip from Scotia Bay to Taku backwards. Trips could be interrupted by a moose or bear on the tracks. Passengers in the open coaches also had to swat away the constant stream of sparks coming through the locomotive. Even though people had to pay the stiff price of $2 for the ride on the tram, $1 a mile, they sometimes had to get out and push. The Duchess and the SS Gleaner at Taku Landing. Sternwheeler SS Tutsi. Oh, the Tutsi, yeah. At Taku Landing, 1920. The Tutsi, based in Carcross, was in operation from 1917 to 1953. When the railway first opened, there was no passenger car, and people had to pile in on flat cars with cargo. The Duchess is shown here in 1900. The Duchess was replaced by engine number 51, shown here at Scotia Bay Wharf, 1919. The SS Tutsi tows engine 51 to Taku to replace the Duchess, 1910. Atlin's First River Nations people are the Taku River Tlingit, historically related to the Tlingit in southeast Alaska. There are two major trails from the Pacific coast through the mountains into the upper Yukon Basin. They led the inland route along the Taku River. One route led up the Sloko River and northwest to Atlin Lake. The other continued northeast to the head of Teslin Lake. The Tlingit name means great water. It's the hotel. This is the main drag here, guys. Well, not really. It's the waterfront drag, basically. Parks of the Skeena. That's the region we're in right now. We're getting into that territory. Stikine District. By 1916, Atlin's growing tourist trade created an increased need for accommodations. To serve this market, White Pass built the Atlin Inn, a 4-story resort hotel. At the same time, the MV Terrain was taking shape nearby. Both were ready for the 1917 season. Stunning scenery, glaciers, wildlife made Atlin a natural destination. And there was more. Guests played tennis and golf, enjoyed short walks or hikes, sampled the local mineral water. They visited the gold mines and the warm springs in McLaughlin Buick touring cars. They shop for Tlingit crafts, thick furs, gold, nugget jewelry in Atlin stores. Many enjoyed romantic midnight cruises to the glacier and islands down the lake aboard the Atlin II. They danced away the summer nights, music by the Atlin Orchestra. The Atlin Inn had 2 large wings and was built in a rural shooting box style. Guests were offered every comfort as well as fine food and excellent service. In 1919, the staff was moved to the quarters on the 4th floor to gain more guest rooms. In 1928, a 3rd wing was added and the huge hotel commanded the waterfront. Busy years followed, but in 1936, the effects of the Depression had curtailed travel. White Pass closed. The inn and beach the MV terrain for the last time. Many years slipped by before the Atlin Road was built and the modern adventurers in campers and RVs discovered the little mining town on Atlin Lake. It's serene here, beautiful and serene. The little steamer Scotia, one of the first ships to appear on Atlin Lake, was launched in 1899 by John Irving Navigation Company. The Scotia was one of several boats that hauled freight and passengers in Atlin's early years. For 50 years, the main movement of freight and passengers to Atlin was on the lakes. In the summer, steamers hauled mining equipment, goods, livestock, and passengers to the isolated community. In winter, White Pass sleighs teams did the same job on a smaller scale. By 1901, White Pass and Yukon route controlled almost all of Atlin's transportation. As passengers and freight loads increased over the years, the company expanded its service. In 1917, the company built 2 boats to serve the burgeoning tourist traffic. The steam-powered Sternwheeler, SS Touchy in Carcross, and the MV Terrain in Atlin. Built 25 meters long, the Terrain flew the flag of the British Yukon Navigation Company, the river division of White Pass. The Terrain was designed as an excursion boat with an observation deck and wicker viewing chairs. The ship took passengers on an 80-kilometer tour of the lake, giving them a chance to see the Llewellyn Glacier, the Torres Channel, and Cathedral Mountain. By the winter of 1927-28, the Terrain had become too small to handle the growing tourist business. The boat was cut apart and 10 meters were added amidship. The engines were replaced with 2 larger engines from one of the company's other vessels. As tourism started to fall off, however, the company cut back on its Atlin operations. In 1936, the Terrain was hauled out and was left to grace the shore of Atlin Lake. It's good they're keeping it alive here, the town. They're preserving it all. These mosquitoes really need to go away. They make everything not as fun. And it's September, and we got mosquitoes here. It means it's warm, but... Oh, mosquitoes, eh? Nice weather, though. We lucked out. Real nice weather. The Atlin, too, there, guys. There's been quite a rich history here in Atlin of history, of culture. The Atlin Orchestra, the Globe Theatre, traveling. It's quite a vacation destination. All the lodges, the gold mining, the White Pass Yukon route. It's a lot of culture here that is important to preserve, right? We got the sun shining on the water right now. Let's just go for a little walk. So this is Atlin, guys. Discovery Saloon, the Atlin post office. Wasn't a thing for me before, but it's apparently become a thing now. We've been getting to post offices now. Look, Atlin. Quite an historic town, though. You see the old clock. Everybody's getting back from work. Nice night. Nice relaxing night. Welcome aboard. Egert store. Jules Egert, master jeweler, opened his first store here in 1902. The 1914 fire destroyed it so quickly he rebuilt it around concrete vault, in which his wife's butler serviced without melting. Egert erected a town clock in 1921. Kershaw's Cafe, 1916. Oh, the Globe Theatre. This is what I wanted to show everybody. So people used to come from all around, guys. They used to take the ferries and they come to Atlin and they come see a show, or they go to the Globe Theatre. See the old buildings, the Garrett store. What does that say? Garrett store. John Garrett, a prominent English cricket player, came to Atlin to mine gold in 1910. And in 1917, he opened this grocery store and dry goods store, where he also sold his wife's fresh baked bread and sweets. Wow. Look at the backdrop to it all, too, eh? Here we go, guys. The Globe. The Globe Theatre. It's a special place, this place. People would come from all around, guys. Yukon, take it up from Telegraph Creek, come see a show, right? Even Vancouver. Come to the Globe Theatre, see a show. Look, they got the upright bass there. It's a nice bass. Nice rendition of it. Good old upright bass, eh? It's fun to play. Globe Theatre, built after the second big town fire in 1916. A player, piano tinkled, and a hand-cranked projector slowed to a stop when the operator dozed off. Loudly howling customers soon had the action on the screen again. Old school, guys. Very old school. The globe. This was a booming place back in the day. It, it's doing well though. It's nice to see how it's being kept alive. It's isolated though. There's no road access from BC. You have to go through the Yukon to get here. You cannot drive from BC here. You have to drive up the Yukon, either up to Cassiar or the Alaska Highway, and then into the Yukon. And then over here. Atlin Volunteer Fire Department. Lots of houses for sale too. Be a nice place to live. Good jobs probably. In some parts, in mining or construction, you know. Not a bad way to do. Fire wagon. A tiny pump truck was purchased after 1900. Flames leveled many major businesses. Although much better than the bucket brigade, it could not halt the Great Fire of 1914 that destroyed most of Atlin. Yeah, unfortunately that was a common occurrence in towns like this. They just, they had fires, guys. Everything was made of wood. And they didn't have the technology quite yet to, you know, fight them efficiently like they do now. And so whole towns would burn, right? Sandon, Caslow, there's just so many to name, guys. They all burnt down, and some survive and some don't, right? Beaton, Camborne, a lot of them. And then, you know, it's whether the question is, do you rebuild or do you not, right? So there was another sign down here, and then coming up to like the edge of the town here, and then you've got the main road, which will take you back, which we're gonna do tomorrow. That takes you back into the Yukon, and then either to Whitehorse, which is where you would go from here to get a lot of your stuff, or, you know, Edmonton, Vancouver, Calgary, wherever you're from, right? Or other parts of the world. Old liquor store, a Tudor style among false fronts, was an unusual choice for this 1931 store. It served for nearly 70 years. Then the government decided to close it in 1999 over strong protests from the townspeople. It was an old liquor store, guys. And the government said no more. Right? What else is new? Let's see here. The Atlin campus, Northern Lights College, UNBC, guys. This is the campus. This is their college campus. Atlin campus, Northern Lights College, UNBC, guys. That's the college. Lots of little cabins here and stuff. That's so cool, though. It's really cool to see that they're preserving the history and keeping everything alive. I really like that, because it's like, it's super important. It was a big deal. A lot of stuff happened here. A lot of crazy, life-changing things for a lot of different people happened here. Famous people came here, you know? And that doesn't even matter, but it's just, this was a big place. And it's a beautiful place. Little Switzerland is what they like to call it here. It's gorgeous. You get the sounds of the birds chirping. It's just nice. Oh, there's an old phone booth. The phone's gone. The hotel that I'm staying at has an old hardline phone, guys. You can't even call that far. You got 250s as far as you can go. It won't call Vancouver, but it's an old phone. It's an old dial phone that you gotta use. The TELUS phone center there. Oh, it might work. Yeah, charge a call. Oh, look at that, eh? Wow, they got a payphone. That's nice. I was just taking in the culture, looking at all the different buildings and the places. The nurses' residence. You see, that's how you know that there's something important, right? Grateful Atlinites built this house in 1902 for their first missionary nurses, Helen Bone and Elizabeth Mitchell, who came here in 1899. and lived in a crude shack while valiantly and humanely caring for the sick and dying pioneers. In 1899, the Presbyterian women of Toronto organized the Atlin Nurse Committee. Helen Bone and Elizabeth Mitchell were sent to serve in the rough, isolated mining town. They worked 12-hour shift as well as cooking for staff and patients. Home was 12 by 18 shack. Pay $25 a month. The old blacksmith shop there. Look at that, eh? Isn't that a picture? Make a lot of money back then as a blacksmith. It was a very, very good living being a blacksmith. The all red route. So it was the all Canadian route, guys. So you'd take a ferry or a boat from Vancouver up to Wrangell, Alaska at the mouth of the Stikine River, and then you'd go up to Glenora and then Telegraph Creek and then up over Chesley Summit and down into Atlin, and then you take the boat up the river or up the lake and then into the Yukon, right? And then start your journey to the gold rush. So it was a very happening place, guys. A lot has gone down here, and that was a good little walk. So we're coming back to the end of our walk here. We walked through town. We saw a lot. There's a little bit more on the other side of town. We can walk down this way a little bit. Why not, eh? See another one of those signs. There's a little mall. It's got the Shell gas station that we drove past. The little the burger shack, the mountain shack there. And then there was another store. And that's basically the mall, guys. That's the Atlin Mall. Some of the old buildings, eh? Oh, the trading post, yeah. Just over here, down the street. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the Atlin trading post, so if you need stuff, guys. I think there's a grocery store there, too. But it's a really cool town, guys. They're keeping all this stuff alive. And, you know, it's just gorgeous. Like, everybody here's so friendly. Everybody's so nice. You know, so welcoming. I've had nothing but good things happen since I've been here. The power was out, but it's back on now. The power's come back on, so they got power back. This is what I was talking about, the little mall here, guys. Nolan's house. John Nolan built this house in 1920. He guided English nobility to come on hunts. Yeah, guys, that's what I'm saying. English nobility, that's harder to read because it's further away. And its paint's all faded. The Atlin trading post. And then past here, guys, you're almost at the highway. Got all kinds of stuff in here. All you could ever want. Mountain shack, burger, restaurant, office. I love the color scheme too, guys. The color scheme of everything. Deep in northwestern BC, guys. We're in the heart of it. We're not as far as we could be. We could go to the Tatshenshini, which we will be doing at another time. But look, the Mountain Shack Cafe, the office, and then the gas station, guys. The shack is a good to eat place too, apparently. It's got some good food. But these mosquitoes are savage. They're in my picture. So I don't really want to keep getting eaten by mosquitoes because I'm getting feasted on like nobody's business here. See the snow creeping down. Those mosquitoes will be leaving quite soon, hopefully. Oh, the sun's going down, so the mosquitoes are coming out bad. And we've done a pretty good covering of the town. We are coming back down the main street. There's the clock. We've basically done kind of a circle around the big three main streets here. Just make sure, guys, if you're ever in town, you're ever up near the Yukon, you want to set aside at least an extra day, probably 2 or 3. Come out here, do some exploring. Coming to the end of it now. This is 5:30 too. Look at that. Just as dinner starts, eh? Good time. 5:30 to 8. That's when they're serving dinner in the hotel there. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Atlin, BC, tour of the town. And like and subscribe to the channel. And Sasquatch Prospector out.